A boy is granted the worst abilities by a god, but he's forced to become powerful in another world. If you're into my recaps, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. Haruka has always been a loner, preferring books over people. In his classroom, there were clear social cliques: popular girls, the class rep, nerds, and other outcasts. Haruka, however, stayed out of it all. He didn't care for his classmates and was content with his isolation. One day, a magic circle appeared, much like the ones he'd read about in manga. While everyone panicked, Haruka tried to escape through an air vent, but the magic circle followed him. Eventually, he found himself in a mysterious white void, where an old man, presumably a god, explained that his classmates had already been transported to another world. Haruka was given the chance to choose his skills and stats before being sent to this new world, but all the best abilities were already taken. Left with only useless skills like holding a stick and general health, Haruka complained to the god. Annoyed, the god granted him all the remaining, seemingly worthless skills at once. Upon entering the new world, Haruka quickly realized that his bag had unlimited storage. His first skill involved rolling dice to allocate stat points, so he decided to focus entirely on luck, maxing it out. This choice paid off as he discovered he had two special skills: Loner, which prevented him from forming parties with others, and Servitude, which allowed him to command others. Haruka set out to establish a base and came across a cave. Using his limited skills like temperature magic, he made a fire and began to make the cave his home. Surprisingly, his basic abilities like fire magic and stick wielding started to improve rapidly. He found edible mushrooms that increased his latent abilities and soon became adept at surviving in this new world. His first encounter with monsters came in the form of two goblins. Though nervous at first, Haruka used his skills and strategy to defeat them, gaining confidence from his victory. He leveled up, his stats doubled, and he discovered new abilities, including magic infusion, which allowed him to enhance his physical and magical strength. Over the next few days, Haruka continued to refine his abilities, defeat more goblins, and even decorate his cave with magic. Despite his victories, he was still craving meat and soon encountered a meaty rabbit. While chasing it, he sensed other presences nearby. It turned out to be his classmates. First, he spotted the delinquents, then the jocks, nerds, and finally, the popular girls. Each group made him uncomfortable, and despite knowing the class rep since grade school, Haruka chose to avoid everyone. Realizing that his life of solitude in this new world offered him the freedom to live without anyone interfering, Haruka made a final decision. He would conquer this new world all by himself. No companions needed. Haruka hides from the other students, but one of the delinquents hears a noise in his direction. Just as Haruka is about to be discovered, the delinquent assumes the sound came from a bunny, meant for Haruka's dinner. Haruka stays hidden, spying on the delinquents to hear what they are discussing. To his dismay, their conversation revolves around their usual degenerate topics, mostly about girls. Haruka knows that despite their behavior, the class rep will keep them in check and prevent them from doing anything inappropriate. However, he also realizes the delinquents have Tanaka on their side, whose abilities might allow them to do whatever they want. After a while, the delinquents head back to the other students, but Haruka, being the serious loner he is, has no interest in joining them. Instead, he returns to his cave to enjoy more of his mushrooms. He discovers that his loner level has gone up, a bittersweet realization since the title is starting to erode his self-confidence. Haruka is still only at level 3. On the 7th day, Haruka wakes up to the sounds of fighting. He finds the nerds engaged in battle and briefly wonders if he should step in to help. Using his appraisal skill, he is shocked to realize that the nerds don't need his help at all. This situation reminds him of his old life, where he was surrounded by top athletes, ace students, and even children of celebrities, constantly wondering how he ended up among them. Deciding that the nerds can handle themselves, Haruka notices some small monsters sneaking up behind them. Remembering the times he was on friendly terms with the nerds, he decides to help them out. After the fight, the nerds thank him, and Haruka invites them to check out his cave. The nerds are amazed at how impressive it is, and Haruka explains that he recently learned earth magic and used it to make his cave secure and cozy. When they ask if he did all of this alone, Haruka simply points out that he's always alone. Curious, Haruka asks why the nerds aren't with the rest of the students, and he is shocked by their response. They're on the run. They explain that when everyone was transported to this new world, chaos immediately followed. No one had any idea how to survive in an isekai, another world scenario, except for the nerds. Their extensive knowledge and quick assignment of skill points drew the attention of the jocks, who demanded information from them. Everyone else was panicking, but the class rep knew they had to keep quiet and stay hidden in the woods. Unfortunately, they were soon found by a group of goblins. Haruka is shocked to hear that even the delinquents were trembling with fear. But this was the nerds' moment to shine. They acted like protagonists from an anime, bravely fighting off the goblins. Inspired by their courage, the jocks joined in, and together they managed to defeat the monsters. The class rep then quickly gathered everyone and led them to a safe riverside clearing. Once there, the nerds continued to shine, helping everyone set up camp. Their deep knowledge of isekai, combined with a lifetime of avoiding outdoor activities, had somehow made them experts in survival. The class rep organized everyone into groups and assigned tasks, and for a short time, it seemed like they had formed a functional community. Everyone was working together as one. However, this sense of unity didn't last long. The popular girls soon decided they didn't want to work anymore. Despite the class rep's efforts to convince them that cooperation was their best chance for survival, the group began to fracture. Exhausted by the constant work, they left all the responsibilities to the nerds. Gradually, the camp fell apart, and there was nothing the class rep could do. Eventually, only the class rep, the nerds, and a couple of other students continued to work, while the rest simply lounged around lazily, contributing nothing. The nerds eventually began to resent the other students, as they were left to do everything, including all the fighting. Despite this, the nerds were reliable, mainly because they had a strong desire to get stronger and level up. They had noticed the skills the delinquents had chosen, skills like charm and puppeteer, which granted control over others. The nerds realized that the delinquents had bad intentions and began leveling up specifically to counter them. The delinquents were also leveling up, needing power to make their manipulative skills effective. The nerds, keeping a close eye on them, eventually learned what the delinquents were planning to do with those skills. Plans that involved manipulating some of the girls in the group. The nerds quickly informed the class rep, and she decided that she too had to become stronger to protect everyone. Unfortunately, the delinquents managed to reach the level requirements for their skills soon after. Just when the class rep happened to run into them, things seemed dire. But before the delinquents could act, they were swiftly taken down. The nerds had anticipated this moment and used their sealing abilities to neutralize the charm and puppeteer skills. They exposed the delinquents' vile plans, which led to the delinquents fleeing from camp. However, the delinquents eventually returned, with seeking revenge. Armed with weapons, they destroyed the camp and declared that they would return later to cause even more chaos. Strangely, the nerds were blamed for everything that had happened. The popular girls, who the nerds had saved from becoming puppets, were the first to turn on them, and the other students soon followed. Although the class rep and a few other students took the nerds' side, it was overwhelming, and the nerds decided to leave. Haruka felt really bad for the nerds, so he threw a mushroom party to lift their spirits. He even spent the following day with them, and during that time, he realized that maybe being a loner wasn't the only way to live. Eventually, the nerds decided to leave, inviting Haruka to join them as they sought a nearby town to start their adventure. Though Haruka admitted to himself that he felt closer to the nerds than any other group, he surprised everyone by declining their offer. He knew that his poor stats would only hold them back, so he wished them well and sent them on their way. The nerds, however, seemed worried about the class rep, and this prompted Haruka to decide to go check on the other students. On his way, Haruka was confronted by a kobold, but he managed to knock it out with a punch. When he reached the campsite, he was surprised to find it empty. Using his enemy detection skill, he noticed some footprints and decided to follow the trail, which led him to find the popular girls. Panicking, Haruka turned to head home and cook dinner, but the girls stopped him, insisting that they just wanted to talk. Haruka wasn't interested. Being around them was the exact opposite of the peaceful solitude he enjoyed. He tried to run, but the girls politely asked him to stop, even saying, "Please," which completely shocked him. They explained that they were looking for the nerds, not to make them work again, but to apologize. They had realized they owed their lives to the nerds. Haruka was skeptical, knowing these girls had likely never apologized to anyone in their entire lives. But they seemed serious. He broke the bad news that they probably wouldn't be able to catch up to the nerds, but they insisted on knowing where they had gone. Haruka pointed out that they wouldn't make it out of the woods in their current state. They didn't even know how to fight. The girls looked discouraged, but Haruka demanded to know if they were really going to give up. He wanted to see if they were truly serious about apologizing to the nerds, and in his own way, he thought of testing them. Unfortunately, his harsh motivational tactics backfired, and the girls started crying. They simply wanted to apologize to the nerds, but now, which activated his domination skill. This made him the leader of the girls, and Haruka was left bewildered by how it all happened. The girls began to follow him around like lost puppies, with hollow, obedient expressions. It became even more unnerving when they started finishing off monsters without saying a word, returning with crystals dropped by defeated monsters as if they were retrieving a toy. Haruka tried to heal them, but they only healed him in return, despite him not needing it. He feared what the class rep would say if she saw this strange dynamic and began to wonder how he could cancel his domination skill. Just then, the class rep found them, but Haruka, deep in thought, didn't notice her at all. She had to force him to acknowledge her presence. Meanwhile, the delinquents somewhere else began plotting again, and they decided that their first priority was to get rid of their biggest threat. Haruka is startled when the class rep screams, but she quickly reminds him that they've been friends since grade school. She's accompanied by the other girls, though the class rep is more concerned about what happened to the popular girls. Haruka doesn't know how to explain that the girls have fallen under his control. He barely understands it himself. Finally, Haruka confesses that the girls have become his servants, which infuriates the class rep. She points out that the domination skill is supposed to work only on monsters. Haruka tries to explain it was a mistake, but none of the girls believe. Feeling trapped, Haruka decides to leave, but the girls stop. Haruka, a loner at heart, just wishes he could go home alone. In the meantime, Haruka decides to practice it. Things start off well, but he ends up accidentally burying himself in the process. Shimazaki told her everything, realizing that Haruka was just trying to help the girls. Haruka, however, doesn't even remember saying anything. The girls thank him for his kindness, but all Haruka wants is to go home. They pressure him to keep helping them, and the class rep becomes curious about what Haruka means by home. Haruka explains that he has built a home in this new world, which shocks the class rep. She thought he was born here. Haruka reveals that he constructed the home himself. The class rep quickly points out that he's the only one with those thoughts. Haruka leads the girls to his house, and they are amazed by the path. Thanks Haruka for everything. She confides in him that the other boys had abandoned the girls, leaving them scared and vulnerable. Being around Haruka, along with the amenities in his home, has helped calm everyone down. Though the class rep feels she hasn't contributed much to the group, Haruka reassures her, pointing out that while she might not have done as much as the nerds, she still played an important role. He explains that the nerds spent their entire lives preparing for this situation by playing games like World of Warcraft, which makes the class rep feel better. As the class rep joins the other girls for the night, Haruka realizes something. He has a home, food, and the ability to defeat monsters. That makes him even weirder than the nerds. The class rep goes to sleep, but Haruka knows he won't be getting any rest tonight. The next morning, Haruka is woken up by one of the girls who tells him that breakfast is ready. Though he just wants to sleep a little longer, she insists. Haruka, still half asleep, is surprised to find that she's made fish for breakfast. After taking a bite, he becomes emotional, realizing how long it's been since he's had such a good meal. The class rep can't believe he's so moved by the fish. They're too fast and slippery to catch, so he's been stuck eating mushrooms by the river. One of the girls demonstrates how she uses lightning magic to stun a group of fish in the water. Haruka asks her to do it again, but this time he wraps her lightning magic with his packing skill, allowing him to move the magic and capture even more fish. Haruka celebrates, realizing he has just learned lightning magic. He's not sure exactly how it works, but he explains to the girls that by using his packing skill on elemental magic, he can harness its power. The class rep is impressed, thinking this new ability is overpowered, but Haruka brushes it off, saying he's stuck with all the worst skills, realizing they need to gain some experience before they can take on tougher monsters. However, he's shocked to learn that all the girls are over level 16, while he's still stuck at level 7. Haruka starts their training by having them fight a group of low-level kobolds, but to his dismay, the girls are the ones who end up knocked out. Haruka, happy that his magic tent has expanded, lets the girls gather inside to review their battle. Afterward, most of the girls leave, but the purple-haired girl from earlier stays behind. She apologizes for her behavior that morning, explaining that she was testing him. The other boys had tried to attack her, so she wanted to see if Haruka was the same. She admits that Haruka is different. He's given them a place to stay, food to eat, and even fight the kobolds again. The class rep tries to tell them they're not ready and need more training. After another round of practice with some goblins, the girls feel confident enough for a rematch. Haruka is concerned, and his fears are confirmed when several girls are knocked out or pretending to be sick. Despite this, some of the girls manage to team up and defeat the kobolds, celebrating their victory. Relieved, Haruka thinks he can finally go back to his loner life. However, he's shocked when the girls declare they're all going to town together. Haruka decides to leave the purple-haired girl behind, but the class rep insists they aren't going over. As they set out on their journey, Haruka warns the class rep that anything could happen. He remains optimistic, declaring that they just need to keep their wits about. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, another student is running for his life. He trips over a tiny pebble and is caught by the person chasing. The man, begging for his life, insists that he doesn't have the skills the stranger is looking for, but his pleas are ignored. The stranger strangles him to death without a word. Meanwhile, back in the forest, Haruka continues leading the girls out of the woods, escorting them to the nearest civilization. On their journey, they encounter a massive level 11 orc. Haruka tells the girls to stand back and observe his fight to learn from him. With that, he charges forward, wielding only a tiny stick while the orc swings its enormous club down. He recalls the nerds telling him that orcs have high physical defense and can only be defeated with magic. Scrolling through his status screen, Haruka discovers a powerful spell known as Grand Magic. The girls look at Haruka suspiciously, since the orc wasn't supposed to be vulnerable to physical attacks. That night, they camp outside rooms while Haruka uses earth magic to set traps for their safety. He detects a group of humans approaching. Worried they might be the delinquents, Haruka is relieved to find that it's only the dumb jocks. The class rep, curious, eavesdrops as Haruka confronts them. The jocks explain that they weren't following the girls, but came to warn Haruka about a dangerous skill called hijack, which allows the user to steal other people's skills and abilities. They assure Haruka that the delinquents don't have it, but warn that someone else might. Haruka teases them for not considering that he might have the skill, but the jocks laugh, saying they'd be relieved if he did, since they know he's not a bad guy. Haruka reveals that he doesn't have hijack, but instead possesses a skill called domination, which sounds worse. The jocks aren't too worried, confident that Haruka will just sit somewhere and not cause harm. They leave after asking him to apologize to the girls on their behalf for not standing up to the delinquents. The next morning, as Haruka prepares the group to continue through the forest, the class rep apologizes to him, revealing that she knows about the conversation with the jocks. Haruka realizes that she's the one with the hijack skill, though she asked the nerds to keep it secret. He assures her it's not a big deal and that the nerds didn't steal it from her because they trust her. This makes the class rep emotional, and Haruka, flustered, runs away, claiming innocence. Later, as they continue their journey, Haruka decides to cheer everyone up by selling fresh fruit juice. One girl jokes about paying in another way since she doesn't have any money, but the class rep scolds Haruka for being a pervert, and he stops selling the juice, making the girls pout. They eventually reach a river where Haruka scouts ahead, using physical enhancement and weight magic to lighten himself. He gets a good view of the forest from above, but crashes to the ground after realizing he doesn't know how to land safely. Back at camp, the class rep scolds Haruka for being reckless, but he smooths things over by offering fresh fruit. The next day, they encounter a party of NPCs from this world being attacked by monsters. The class rep insists on helping them, despite Haruka's warning that the NPCs could be dangerous. Reluctantly, Haruka agrees and uses his magic to launch himself toward the NPCs. However, as he flies, he realizes the class rep is hanging onto his cloak, having been caught up in his wind magic. They crash down on the monsters, inadvertently saving the NPCs. The NPCs introduce themselves as Ofer and Gaich, thanking Haruka for the rescue. They explain they're merchants who picked up an adventurer's quest to fend off monsters attacking the route. Afterward, Haruka cooks some of his bush mushrooms, and the NPCs reveal that they're quite valuable, much to Haruka's jealousy. The class rep keeps Haruka in line, preventing him from becoming a villain, and the group follows the NPCs to a town called Amui. The girls rush toward it, excited, while in the background, we see the delinquents leveling up and plotting revenge. They plan to regain their puppetry and mesmerize skills first, while the jocks secretly observe, worried about their next move. Haru couldn't help but smile as he watched the girls excitedly explore the new city. For a moment, Haru wondered if he should leave since his job seemed done. Thankfully, the class rep was there to maintain order. Frustrated by the chaos, she yelled at Haru to help her manage the flock of bumbling idiots, as she put it. Haru chuckled, thinking she was exaggerating, but when she blew her whistle, the girls immediately gathered around her like a team of disciplined soldiers. Haru was impressed. He had never realized the class rep held so much authority. Feeling reassured that the girls were in capable hands, he leaned back to relax, until the class rep turned to him with a glare, making it clear he wasn't off the hook just yet. First, they'd visit the Adventurers Guild to trade their loot and use the money to register with the guild. The class rep shot him a sharp look before ushering everyone toward the guild. When they arrived, Oft explained that the guild master wanted to see him. To his surprise, the guild master's demeanor shifted instantly. Shaking Haru's hand enthusiastically, he thanked him for saving Oft's party, admitting they wouldn't have survived without him. Haru left the meeting dazed but relieved. Downstairs, Haru approached the reception desk to trade the emerald crystals he had collected. When Haru poured out a massive sack of crystals, unfortunately, the guild didn't have the manpower to appraise or the funds to pay for such a large haul immediately. To his surprise, the girls had already registered with the guild. The adventurers were shocked to learn most of them were already level 30, far surpassing expectations. Haru grinned knowingly. He had trained them well enough to take on level 40 adventurers if needed. The class rep insisted Haru register too, though he had no plans to become an adventurer. Seeing an opportunity to impress the girls, he stepped into the registration room. A blonde receptionist checked his stats, only to burst out laughing. "You're not even level 10, she sneered. "You can't register without a party, and you'll need to reach level 20 to even think about adventuring solo." The class rep, feeling sorry for him, quickly cheered him up, and they all headed to their hotel. That night, everyone enjoyed proper beds for the first time in ages. While the others slept soundly, Haru lay awake, missing the familiarity of the forest. The next morning, Haru returned to the guild to collect his payment. However, the receptionist and her superiors apologized profusely. They didn't have enough money to pay him for all his emeralds. He offered to pay in installments instead. Gat, ever the true friend, pulls Haru aside and advises him to ditch the freeloaders. "You need to get some real fun, my man," he whispers conspiratorially, winking as he hints at a certain shop. Haru's interest is piqued. Having endured a painfully disciplined no-nut November streak for 23 grueling days, his imagination runs wild. Despite the class rep's protests, Haru follows Gat into the city, drooling at the thought of what awaits. His excitement turns to disappointment when Gat leads him to a worn-down shop on a quiet street. The shop is a treasure trove of unique items, from enchanted armors to mystical weapons. Enthralled, Haru goes on a shopping spree, loading his cart with everything that catches his eye. Just as he thinks he's found it all, his gaze falls on a peculiar necklace. "What does this do?" Haru asks the eccentric shopkeeper. "It fuses items into one," the shopkeeper replies, their tone tinged with both pride and warning. Haru's curiosity gets the better of him, and he fiddles with the necklace despite the shopkeeper's protests. In a moment of clumsiness, he accidentally activates the item, fusing all the gear in his cart. The shopkeeper shrieks in horror, revealing that the combined items are worth over 660,000 zenizens. Haru is dumbstruck, barely able to process the number. Gat tries to negotiate, but the class rep intervenes, apologizing profusely while admitting they only have 50,000 on them. In the following days, Haru sinks into a deep depression. He devises a plan to escape the city. With Harry Potter-esque invisibility magic, he slips past the girls guarding his tower. Feeling overly confident, Haru recklessly removes his cloak and attempts to parkour over the city walls, only to fail miserably and injure himself, much to the amusement of a group of sporty girls who happen to witness his blunder. Caught and dragged back to the tower, Haru feigns obedience and promises the class rep he'll behave. But the moment he's alone, he tries again, successfully sneaking out of the city under his invisibility spell. This time, he's determined to return to the wild forest he calls home. On his journey back, Haru spots a destroyed village, goblins sniffing blood trails, and even a robbery in progress. Though tempted to intervene, he reasons that these incidents are part of this world's harsh reality and continues on his way. However, when one of the robbers hurls a spear at him, Haru retaliates. He easily defeats them, but his victory attracts the attention of a noble girl named Mary. She introduces herself, thanks him profusely for his help, and begs him to escort her safely to her destination, offering a reward in return. Enticed by Mary's promises, Haru reluctantly agrees. Thanks for watching this recap. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and let us know in the comments which anime you'd like us to cover next.